Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to Tabitha's Travels. We're in Christmas week, and today we're going to read part 3 and part 4 of the final week of the saga of Tabitha's Travels. If you remember, she's found her father. He's about to be executed. She's trying to make her way through the guards. We don't know if the person that went to get his parchment, the proof of his citizenship, is going to show up in time. We just don't know. But the last thing we heard was a high-pitched scream. Tabitha turned and struggled to see where the noise had come from. "Tabitha!" a high-pitched voice screamed again. This time she found the source. Her friend Simon, at a side entrance to the throne room. He had tried to sneak in, but was caught by a guard, who now had the boy thrown over his shoulder like a sack of wheat and was taking him away. But then Tabitha saw something else. In Simon's hand was a scroll of parchment. "Tabitha!" the boy yelled again, and Tabitha knew she had only moments to act. Her own guards had stopped to stare at the commotion, and relaxed their grip ever so slightly. Taking advantage of this, Tabitha kicked her feet out from under her, dropping all her weight on her wrists. The Roman hands holding those wrists were sweaty from exertion, and Tabitha's fingers slipped easily through. In a second, she had jumped to her feet and raced halfway to Simon. Tabitha's guards reacted quickly, and were a few steps behind her. Simon was just being carried out the door when he gave the scroll a mighty throw. It landed on the shiny marble 2 steps in front of Tabitha, and she scooped it up without stopping. The guards dove at the girl and tackled her, but not before she had passed the scroll to her father as easily as when playing catch with her brothers. Eliakim caught the perfect throw with chained hands. Now Eliakim's guards grabbed for the parchment, but before anyone knew what was happening, he threw it in the face of Coponius, whose natural reaction was to grab the incoming projectile before it hit him in the nose. The whole room froze in silence. Roman guards stared at their leader, terrified of the wrath that was sure to kill everyone in sight. Jewish servants stopped and stared, forgetting to keep their eyes to the floor, shocked as much by Tabitha's actions as by Eliakim's. Eliakim and his brothers stared, wondering if their fate had just been sealed. And Tabitha lay under 2 Roman guards and stared, wondering if she had been in time. For a long moment, Coponius considered the scroll in his hand. "He must be deciding whether to read it or ignore it," Tabitha thought, and she prayed to Jehovah that it was the former. Finally, Coponius lowered his arm. He eyed the scroll a moment longer, then slowly began unrolling it. He read it silently, then seemed to read it again. Finally, he pulled it close to his face, staring at something in the bottom corner. "Centurion!" he barked, and everyone in the room jumped at the sudden sound. "My lord," the centurion said, crossing his right arm on his chest and dropping to one knee. "Why is it," Coponius continued, "that you have arrested a citizen of Rome without cause?" The centurion looked up at his master in shock. I had no proof." "Well, you have it now," Coponius roared. "Release this man immediately, for he is not only a citizen of Rome, but a personal friend of Caesar." A gasp swept across the entire room, and people instantly started gossiping. Do you see this seal? Coponius continued, shouting at the soldier, who even then was unlocking the shackles on Eliakim's wrists. This is the personal seal of Caesar Augustus. You have not only shamed Rome by your actions, you have humiliated your emperor. By now, the 3 prisoners had been freed, and the centurion was groveling at the feet of Coponius. Sensing that the tides had turned, the guards holding Tabitha let her free, and in 2 moments and 3 steps she was leaping into her father's arms. "Father! Father!" she cried. She buried her head in her father's shoulder and sobbed in happiness and relief. "There now, quiet, my little one," Eliakim whispered. "Jehovah has seen fit to keep me alive another day." Coponius ordered the centurion arrested and taken from his sight. All of this amused Herod to great ends, and he sat on his smaller throne laughing merrily as the Roman was dragged out screaming. "A fine show you put on, Coponius," Herod said between laughs. "First you free a Jew who strikes one of your soldiers, then you arrest your soldier for arresting the Jew, all at the bidding of a girl. Will you next make slaves of all the Romans to us Jews?" Herod let out another hysterical laugh, but was cut off instantly when Coponius slammed his staff into the floor and yelled, "Silence!" The room froze once again. "You are mocking a citizen of Rome," Coponius roared, "and because he is a citizen," he said, pointing at Eliakim but speaking at Herod, "he far outranks you, a simple Jew, and not only him, but his brothers, and his sons, and his wives, and even," he said with a glance at Tabitha, "his daughters. Take care what you say, king, or I shall place this shepherd on your throne." Herod's face went stark white, then instantly flushed bright red. He struggled to his feet, facing Coponius, and Tabitha could see that he was weak and sickly. 6 guards surrounded Coponius, their spears pointed toward Herod. "Take care with your words, Roman," he yelled. "I am Herod the Great, friend of Caesar." Coponius shook his head slowly. "You may have once been great," he said, "but now your mind has gone mad. Do you not think Caesar knows about you? How you first plotted against him and only joined his side when you saw that Antonio would be defeated? He called you friend because it was to his advantage. But now you've become a liability. Why do you think I am here, O great Herod? Caesar himself sent me to investigate you." Coponius leaned toward Herod and whispered loudly, "And if you do not soon die of your own diseases, I will recommend to Caesar that he order your death himself." Herod was shaking, and Tabitha couldn't tell if it was from his fevers, fears, or anger. But a moment later he turned his back to Coponius, and with the help of his attendants, hobbled from the room. With Herod gone, the guards stepped back, and the whole room relaxed. Coponius turned his attention back to Eliakim and said, "Now, my brother, would you care to tell me how you happen to know our emperor?" Consider this. The letter from Caesar came between Eliakim and his judge to plead Eliakim's case. Hebrews tells us that Jesus stepped in to plead our case before God, saving us from death. What would happen if Eliakim and you both rejected such help? And today we are also reading part 4. And so we continue. Eliakim bowed before Coponius, then stood and told his story. "It happened 4 years ago," he began. "In the desert of the Negev, we were camped some distance from Herar, near the road to Beer Lahairoi. I was riding my camel at sunset, scouting between the dunes, when I saw a small caravan in the distance. I rode toward them, thinking they perhaps needed my help." Eliakim took a deep breath, then continued. "The caravan was a small band of Romans, a few soldiers, a few advisors, and priests, and a man who seemed to be the center of authority." Pacing now, Eliakim rubbed his bearded chin, but was careful to never turn his back on Coponius. "As I approached, I asked if I could help," he continued. "One of the advisers mocked me, and they said they needed no help from a Jew. He started them off in a direction that I knew would lead them deep into the wilderness. So I followed at a distance. Soon a sandstorm hit, blinding the Romans and spooking their animals. When I heard the clamor, I rode ahead and found the man of authority wandering on foot, far from the rest of the caravan." Eliakim stopped his pacing and looked straight at Coponius. He had been thrown from his horse and was limping. I laid my camel down for shelter and made tents of blankets. I cared for his ankle and fed him well. We spent the night listening to the sand devils make their play. That's when he told me his name. Caesar Augustus. A gasp crossed the room, and everyone stared in disbelief. "We talked of many things throughout the night," Eliakim continued. "He was a curious man, interested in many things, interested especially in King Herod." Coponius' eyebrows shot up in curiosity. "And what did you tell him?" he asked. Eliakim shrugged. "I told him the truth, as I knew it," he said. Coponius nodded. "And his reply?" Tabitha thought her father seemed uncomfortable at the question, and she noticed he shifted his weight and looked to the floor. But she also saw a hint of a smile on his face. "He said," Eliakim answered after a few moments, "that he would rather be one of Herod's pigs than one of his sons." The whole room erupted in laughter, including Coponius. "And with that I would agree," he said. "Continue." "In the morning," Eliakim concluded, "I gathered my advisers, who had scattered across the desert like seeds in the wind. Then I set them on a true course. But before they left, Augustus the Great made me a citizen of Rome and wrote for me in his own hand the parchment you now hold in yours." Coponius stared at the parchment reverently. "Augustus touched this very parchment," his look seemed to say. Tabitha watched as he carefully re-rolled the document, then slid the binding ribbon back in place. "It is an honor to have in my presence one who both knows and saved my emperor," he said, handing the parchment back to Eliakim. "Had we not just feasted, I would hold a great banquet in your honor." Eliakim bowed again, and Coponius continued. "You shall have the protection of my best squad in all your travels," he declared, "and shall be given whatever provision you need. But first, consent to stay with me a few days, that I may properly thank you for your service to Rome." Eliakim bowed once more. This was a difficult situation, Tabitha could tell, because he could offend the Roman by refusing his invitation. "Be careful, Father," she pleaded silently. "If you answer wrong, you may still die." Consider this. Eliakim had compassion on his enemy, even though he had no idea it would one day save his life. Do you think Jesus wants us to love other people only when it might someday work to our advantage? No. Jesus' call is clear: to love all our neighbors as we love ourselves. Because he loves the whole world and he came for the whole world. And that's the story of Christmas. He is for everyone. It is then for us to say, "Yes, I believe you. I receive you." Good night, and we'll pick up our story again tomorrow.